Welcome back to Petty Daydreams, your one-stop shop for advice, funny anecdotes about my life, and also serious discussions about topics relevant to modern women. So this week, I actually have on a guest I think you guys are going to love. It's going to freaking blow your mind, and I'm not exaggerating. So let's talk about the things we normally don't talk about. Periods, menstruation, menstrual blood, menstrual cups. Let's just get it all out of the way right now, because as a woman, you should not feel uncomfortable or feel shame about things that naturally occur to you. Although I know from my own experience that oftentimes those things and those parts of your life and parts of your body that are natural often come with some kind of inherent shame, whether that's from your religion or just the household you grew up in. And so I'm having on today a cycle coach. She's really awesome. I think you're going to enjoy the interview. After that, we're going to give advice to a listener and then wrap it all up with a hot take. So as always, guys, I'm thanking you from the get-go. We're almost to 1,000 downloads and listens, and we're not even at the end of the third month of this podcast. So as you know, this is a weekly podcast. Every week I sit down, I try and find new content, new discussions, new thoughts to bring to you, to offer you a new perspective and maybe help you generate discussions with the people you care about most in your life. So we might as well just get right into the interview, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, everybody, so now I have Pirita on the line today. So she is incredibly interesting. I know I've kind of given her an introduction in the beginning of this episode, but she is a multi-talented entrepreneur. She is a cycle coach. She actually has some resources online if you're wanting to discover more about that after the episode. But I'm just basically going to have her come in and talk about what she does. And so I just want to say good morning, because you're actually across the globe. So it's good to have you on today. How are you doing?
Hi, Bobbie. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm doing really well. Thank you.
I wanted to kind of give my listeners some background on you. So would you mind telling my listeners about yourself, where you're from, just some background info?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally actually from Finland, moved to Australia about 2.5 years ago. So in terms of career background, it's actually quite interesting. So when I lived in Finland, I studied political science, and basically my dream job was to work for UN or something like that. And then I moved to Australia, did some odd jobs here and there, and then I decided to do a yoga teacher training because I had practiced yoga for nearly 10 years at that time. I did my yoga teacher training, started teaching yoga, and got incredibly interested in our natural cycles, basically. So our menstrual cycle, for example, the 5-element theory, and the cycle that we go through every year and every day. And through that, I then basically became a cycle coach.
So did you come up with that title yourself?
There are actually a few cycle coaches or period coaches in the world and in Australia, especially. In terms of the title, I think it's not really probably set in stone, and that might even change for me as well. I think it's such an interesting field to be working in, and something that even though women have always lived with their cycles, but that's something that's becoming, I think, more and more popular, and more women are starting to really tune in to their cycles. So cycle coach is something that you would find somewhere else as well, but for me, cycle coach probably matches what I do more than a period coach.
Gotcha. So it's really one of those things. When I found out what you did, I was just like blown away, because I think a lot of women, our periods and our cycles are something that we're just, I don't know, we kind of see it as this kind of just challenge or more of an
Mm-hmm.
annoyance, and we don't really learn to live with it. We learn to live around it. So
Absolutely.
I love this whole approach in that, like, this is part of what you do up until, you go into menopause, and then you have shifting uh, chemicals in your body at that point. But it's just, we almost never talk about this or think about this. And I came across you. So we actually met through an online course and Facebook group. So do you connect often with people through these avenues?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're some of the best places to connect with people, especially fellow women in business. And it's just a really easy way to make friends in this day and age, and also just find people who are interested in what you do and people with unique skill sets that you can work with and so on. So, yeah, absolutely.
So tell me, like, you are certified in yoga, and then you're a cycle coach. Tell me kind of more about how these things fit together for you professionally.
So, yoga is something that really helps us to tune into our bodies and ourselves. And for me, yoga is a tool that helps me to become really present and really notice how I'm feeling in my body. And what cycle awareness is, it's about noticing how you're feeling each day in your cycle, and really noticing how your body shifts and changes each day, because as you mentioned, we just kind of like learn to live around our cycle. And many women just think that your cycle is your period, even though your cycle is the whole cycle from the beginning of your period now and then the next period, basically. So, cycle
Yeah.
awareness is about noticing the shifts in your energy levels, how your hormones affect your mood, your energy, your productivity, and even the way you burn fat, even the way you build muscle, the way you want to socialize with other people. There's parts in your cycle when you naturally feel more confident and extroverted, and then parts in your cycle when you feel a little bit more introverted or tired. So yoga is an amazing way to really tune into our bodies, and especially because my clients are usually women who have quite stressful jobs and they're really busy, and might not really have that time to really tune in. For example, journal every day their cycle. So yoga, in a sense, is a really good way to then kind of like notice the little shifts in your body. It's also an amazing way, especially when you're approaching your period, what I call the autumn phase of your cycle, and even on your period. Yoga is such a great tool to slow down and give yourself a little bit more space, because what we've been taught ever since we were little kids is, or little girls, that we just need to push through our periods, and we can't seem weak in this world or society built by men, predominantly for men. So we women, we just need to push through and basically show that we are really strong. So yoga is a really great way to just give yourself a little bit more compassion, slow down, and also learn to work with your cycle and your periods.
I mean, it is. It's partly because there's this patriarchal world, and a lot of the times we're put into biological comparison with men when we're so biologically different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love that you're saying, like, I think women to some degree are aware of the way they feel throughout their cycle and how it affects how they feel about themselves, like you said, confidence and stuff like that. But like what you're really doing is getting them to, I don't know, be more aware of those changes and what phase of their cycle they're in, so that they can also use that to perform at their best, while also giving themselves the, not the excuse, but allowing themselves to make space for those days when they actually need rest, which is something I see you post about a lot on your Instagram.
Yes, absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest things that I want to talk about. Also, because I used to be very much an overachiever and I still struggle with, being an overgiver and pushing myself a little bit too much. And I definitely know that I'm not the only one. And that's why I said that most of my clients are women who have really stressful and busy jobs. And because I can really relate to them and they can really relate to me. And we just really need to be able to invite more compassion and space into our lives and just let go of that mentality that we should, be able to perform in the same way every single day or feel the same every single day. Because as you said, we do have such strong biological differences compared to men, and men basically go through that 24-hour cycle each day, whereas women go through the monthly cycle and the 24-hour cycle. But the monthly cycle is a really strong thing in the background that you should learn to honor.
I think my listeners are going to be like, this is, radical, like thinking about any of this. So I want to know, when was this idea first, when did it first come to mind for you? I know you said that, you had some changes, you moved and everything like that. So when did this come into the equation? Or what spurred this idea?
For me, I actually did find another cycle coach, and I actually listened to a podcast episode where I heard another cycle coach talk about this thing. And at the same time, in my yoga teacher training, we were going through the 5-element theory and, yin and yang philosophy and all that. And then when I was studying that and learning more about that, I just, started to think, hey, why aren't we not talking about for example, the 5-element theory and all the qualities in terms of the menstrual cycle? Why are we just talking about it in terms of the whole year? For example, that in the winter, you have this more natural tendency to rest and, just curl up under a blanket or eat warming foods, and then in the summer you feel more extroverted and social. So why are we only talking about that in terms of the whole year and not in terms of the cycle, where it is actually so strongly present all the time? And as you said, most women probably do notice the differences in each day of their cycle, but we're just taught to push through. So you probably kind of just try to ignore them and resist that idea of, for example, resting on your period so that you would have more energy during the rest of the cycle.
To me, I had never even heard of a cycle coach before I encountered you online. I obviously prepare a little bit before these podcasts for my listeners. So I was on her website and it said that you moved. It said that you had you left your career like you talked about, and that was actually causing you to experience burnout and irregular periods. And then you moved from Finland to Australia for love. So this time of your life, before, now, sounds extremely transitional and like a lot was going on. Can you tell me a little bit more about that time in your life?
So when I lived in Finland, as I mentioned, I studied political science, and I felt a very competitive environment where I was in. And prior to that, when I was a teenager and a young adult, I was competing in sport, and I've always been a very competitive person and a person who wants to, be basically the best at whatever I do. And basically, I just always felt like I was pushing myself a lot, and there were times in my life where I had so much going on, and I had my first burnout when I was 20, because I was just working basically nonstop, studying, working out, and I was working out not based on my monthly cycle, just based on the 24-hour cycle, expecting myself to perform the same every single day. Also, there's things like cutting out your carbs to lose weight, even though I've always been really fit. But all these, trendy diets or trendy exercise routines, and you just start to try them out. And when you're in that age, like back then I was 20, and you're still finding yourself, so that can all be very overwhelming. And then a few years later, when I had completed my bachelor degree in political science, I had met my partner, who was Australian. We were in a long distance relationship for, I think, 20 months, I think, almost. Well, a little bit over 1.5 years, which felt like eternity back then. I was just, I always I had this idea that because I have done my bachelor degree in political science, so obviously I need to do my master's degree, and I've already started this. What are people going to say if I just quit and move to Australia for love, especially in political science when you're surrounded by like really hardcore feminists who are like it's going to be the worst decision you make in your life if you move overseas for love. And I did that and I moved here. And it was really difficult in the beginning because, well, let's just briefly mention like when you move to Australia, the easiest way to come here is on working holiday visa. But how you can work on the working holiday visa is really restricted. So the jobs that I did were, not my dream jobs to be honest. So it was really, really difficult back then. And then luckily I gave myself the permission to start the yoga teacher training. And even there, I had all these limiting beliefs that if I become a yoga teacher, you can only make like a certain amount of money, or, you can only teach at studios or and so on. But then I just realized, hey, I can actually, have my own business and, I can stand out with my unique skill set. And which is really interesting because then later on, cycle awareness was something that came into my life. And here we are.
I can't imagine all that change in all that time. And then, I mean, you devoted years to studying political science. I mean, it'd be very hard for me. I mean, I can understand like the mindset too you were coming out of. Like, political science is like very strategic. I don't think it really leaves room for a lot of like, I don't know, more spiritual questions or things that push the envelope a little too much. So I think it's incredible that you also acknowledged that you had those limiting beliefs, or like you're at the stage now that you recognize that those were limiting beliefs. What led you to like move past those limitations?
I think I always knew that, for example, political science or working in a career that is, doesn't, as you said, doesn't really leave that much space for, spirituality or anything like that. And I just always knew that, it's something else that I should be doing. It's really interesting because actually, I think it was last week, I did the 16 personalities test. And back then, when I was studying political science, my result was commander. And back then, I was someone who was quite extroverted, loved to lead conversations, and lots of times I made decisions based on what I thought was expected of me or what I thought would look good in other people's eyes. And back then, success for me would have been, be in a really high position in a really cool organization. But then I did the test again last week and my result was advocate, and it just really highlighted how I really need to have this, spiritual connection with what I do and really find meaning in my work and be able to help others. And that's what really drives me. And I'm more an introverted person and someone who really needs time alone. So
It sounds like to me like what really pushed you forward is you knew that what you were doing wasn't working for you, and you knew where you were going was much more tied to like who you are as a person and what you need on a deeper level.
yep, so I definitely knew that I need something more meaningful in my life. I think it was a good way for me to kind of like combine that really competitive nature where I know that, if I set my mind to something, I can achieve that, but also having that, spiritual aspect and really going deep and having that meaning in my work and knowing that, I can. And after I moved to Australia, I was here. I didn't know anyone here except my partner and his family. So I just knew that, I was able to move here. I was able to, overcome those fears of moving overseas and, starting over. So I just knew that if I start my business here, I'll be fine.
I mean, not a lot of people can say that, they did all of those things. I think it's awesome that you can look back and say, I moved to a different country. I dealt with the visa process. I completely changed career paths from what I thought I was going to do. And like, you just keep going. I find that really inspiring.
Oh, thank you. For me, because I've gone through so many changes during the last couple of years, I kind of like have started to see it as a norm. So you kind of like often just forget all the things that you've already gone through. So it's a really good to also just stop and remind yourself of how far you've already come and what challenges you've, faced and overcome.
So going back some, obviously you're at a different point in your career than when you started, but what did those first months in your business, with yoga and cycle coaching, what did that look like?
So the first months were very, very intense, I would say. As I said, I'm a person, if I decide that I want to, achieve something and set my mind to it, I really work hard for it. And I think that that's something that we have in common as well. So the first months were definitely super, super intense, very like a lot of learning, because I think with that competitive nature also comes the assumption that you can do so much, or like you basically have these unlimited resources and you can do this project and you can do like an online course and this and this and this. So I think the first months were definitely a learning curve, and also learning patience and knowing that I don't really have to rush anywhere, and I'm just building my foundations, just getting more, I think, exposure to a wider audience, and just, I think, in the field where I work in, as you said, you've never heard of a cycle coach before. So the work right now, what I do is also just making people aware that there's such thing as being a cycle coach, and there's such thing as cycle awareness. And I know it's also talking about your period can be very overwhelming, and lots of people can have lots of trauma when it comes to their period. Lots of people may deal with like super, super, super painful periods, and their whole menstrual cycle can be something that's just something that it's like a really big burden for them. So it might be very scary for them to talk about their periods. So it's also something, for example, on Instagram, I can't really go to ask someone, hey, how's your period? How was your how was the blood during this period, or something like that. It's just, I think, creating authentic conversations and connections, and then going from there, and really, building that trust. Because if I was someone who just met someone, I wouldn't feel comfortable with talking about my periods with them. But just, over time, I know that like lots of women come to me now asking about their periods, or asking these really, I think, intimate questions. And now I've known them for a few months, so now they have the courage to come and talk about such an intimate thing to me.
Throughout all of history, a woman's period has been made to be such a taboo thing. Like, women are still, and around the world, not allowed into a place of worship on their period, or like they're unclean for a certain amount of time. I think it says so much that we're getting to this point where we can have these discussions and have those authentic conversations, like you said, even just talking with other women or with somebody who actually does this professionally like you, and just having those conversations opens up this like new world of understanding, and like, I guess, removing the shame that we're, I don't know, from like a young age we associate a lot of negative emotions with our periods. So I think moving into this, we're going to be able to, I don't know, become more connected to this part of ourselves just by talking about it too, like what you do. I mean, a lot of what you do is just awareness of the fact that, this is something, that you can incorporate into your life to make it better and to be high performing or more high performing in your life.
Yes, absolutely. Just, education, raising awareness. And as you said, our whole lives we've, just tried to resist periods, because in our society, all period related issues such as period pain or PMS and so on have been normalized. And in many of the cases, those issues are just because of, high stress and inflammation, because we live in such a busy society where you're constantly basically under stress. So I think it's so important to understand that your menstrual cycle is actually a gift, and it can, you can actually use it as your superpower when you learn to work with it, and when you allow yourself the space to overcome those period related issues. and understanding that even though they have been normalized and they're common issues, you necessarily shouldn't go through them every month.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of women, that's extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Just being barred from talking about something, you don't realize that like things could be better or things could be improved, or you could have a totally different perspective on something that's going to be with you. I mean, for at least a quarter of your life or a third of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the fact that issues with conceiving or fertility issues are on the rise all the time. And obviously, it's not just women, or it's not like women's fault
Mm-hmm.
that those issues are on the rise. But also just, living in tune with your cycle and really, honoring your cycle could really help you, even if you're now in the age or in a situation in your life where you're not planning a family or not planning to have a baby. But that thing might change in a few years, and if you've already done the work and already connected with your cycle and healed your cycle, basically it will most likely be so much easier for you to have that baby when the time comes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an integration for all phases of your life as a woman, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
So you have different terms, like you said, the autumn phase, stuff like that. Can you describe what the basic course of a woman's cycle is?
Obviously, I know that you might have listeners, and there might be lots of people in the audience who have irregular cycles, or people whose cycle is not the average 28 to 29 days. But the average cycle is or starts from your period, so the first day of your period. And period is not, the spotting before your period, it's the actual first day when you bleed. And what I call that, and in the cycle coach world, it's called the winter phase or menstruation phase. Basically, when you bleed, when you're on your period, and that's when you most likely feel a little bit more introverted, a little bit more tired. You might experience pain if period pain is a thing that you're currently struggling with. What I recommend doing in that phase is definitely resting for the first couple of days, taking it really easy, eating warming foods, and just, spending more time on self-care. And towards the end of your period and after your period, you move to the spring phase or follicular phase. And it's when your estrogen levels start to rise. You most likely start to feel more energetic and like you're ready to work again. And this is a really good phase, especially the first days of this phase, to set goals for this menstrual cycle, plan what you want to, achieve, what tasks you want to complete, and so on. And the follicular phase, when it comes to exercise routine, is good for more cardio based workouts, more high intensity workouts. And in my yoga classes, I teach more vinyasa classes and classes that incorporate lots of twists, heart openers, and so on. And from spring phase, you move to the ovulation phase. And if you have a healthy average 28 or 29 day menstrual cycle, your ovulation phase is most likely around days 12 to 16 or 14 to 18, depending on your cycle. In the ovulation phase, well, the name says it all, you ovulate then. And this is when you probably feel more attractive, more confident, because basically nature wants you to have sex and make a baby. So this is a really good phase to, for example, do interviews, do presentations. If you, for example, have work where you need to have meetings a lot, summer phase or ovulation phase is perfect for that. Different women experience this differently. For example, I feel super energetic and good in my ovulation phase, but I know some people or some women or menstruating people start to feel a little bit more tired in the ovulation phase. This is also because your estrogen levels start to drop, but then again, for example, your testosterone level rises in this phase. And then after ovulation, your progesterone levels start to rise and you move to the luteal phase of your cycle or autumn phase, the inner autumn, when you start to probably feel like you want to finish some projects, you want to like go off this cycle, and you kind of like just want to prepare what's, next in the future, and you start to, or if you experience PMS, this is most likely when you experience it, and PMS is actually most likely because you feel stress. And what is interesting about autumn phase and the progesterone hormone is that it's a precursor to cortisol. So if you feel stressed, your body will prioritize cortisol production over progesterone, which can cause PMS, period pain, and so on. So that's why you might experience PMS in this phase of your cycle. So it's really important that you actually just, manage your stress. You slowly start to unwind a little bit more, slow down, still, work, finish some projects. And when it comes to your exercise routine, it's good to start doing more not so intense cardio exercises, more so weight training, body weight training. And in my yoga classes, for example, I teach more slow flow yoga, more forward folds and so on in this phase.
I mean, that's a lot to take in. I think for people who have only ever said, like, maybe they could tell that they were ovulating, or they definitely know when they're on their period. But I mean, it's just important to know that there's these phases, more to it than just your period. And you specifically, so as a cycle coach, you like to help high performing women specifically to incorporate your teachings into their lives. So why is that it's important for them to incorporate it into their lives? And then, like, what benefits can they see from working with you and learning about this and making changes?
I think the most important thing is to manage stress and avoid burnout, because stress can cause all sorts of issues, not only with your menstrual cycle, but stress is probably the biggest factor when it comes to any illnesses in the world currently, which is really alarming. And we experience so much stress, especially if we have really demanding jobs and so on. So definitely managing stress, and through that also avoiding burnout, being able to, well, not lower expectations, but in a way just manage your expectations a little bit better and know what you're capable of, and just having that compassion for yourself, and I think more patience in a way, and starting to understand that slowing down or resting is not a weakness. Like, it's definitely not a weakness, and we just think that in a way it would be, because we just, a lot of people have this mentality that if you're not working or working out, you're being lazy, basically. So just understanding that slowing down or resting can be the most productive thing that you do, because if you take that time to manage stress in the autumn phase, even if you're still working and finishing projects or doing some more detail-oriented work, and then if you're taking the time to rest, especially during the first couple of days of your period, and then slowly getting back to it, that will help your body to prepare for the rest of your cycle. And especially in the autumn phase, you want to avoid the excess stress to balance your hormones, because the progesterone keeps your estrogen in check in the spring phase. So if you do that in the autumn phase, so manage that stress, you will most likely also feel better in the spring phase, and that will give you so much more energy to actually be productive, to get your tasks done, and also be super kick-ass productive in the summer phase, and feel more confident and feel more extroverted, because you will also need that in order to do your work. So I just think that it's about finding balance and just understanding that it's not just black and white, that rest here and take action here. It's just really understanding that rest and taking action are always going hand in hand, and you should also incorporate these into every day, and just knowing that even if you take rest, even if you take some time off, you're not weak. You're just, you just know your body. You have the confidence to say that, okay, right now I just need some time off, and then you can come back to it tomorrow or next week with fresh eyes and with fresh mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hardest thing for people to do, is when you are a high performer, when you are an executive, when you run your own business, it's very hard to justify in your mind setting aside time just for yourself. And to set up those boundaries too, like, I'm physically exhausted. I cannot do this right now. But I think it's like that thing we're just taught, keep going, just ignore what's going on inside of you when, like you said, it's balance, it's the yin and yang, finding that both things, when you use both things in balance, it's so much better than trying to force one or the other.
Exactly. That's really well said. Like, either, like, you can't force rest if you feel really energetic. Like, why would you want to rest if you genuinely, honestly feel really energetic and like you want to work? And in the same way, why would you force that work and probably half-ass your work if you're feeling super tired and your body is asking you to rest? So just really living in tune with that, and also knowing that, you know, in the long run, you probably will get more benefits if you just actually honor what your body is telling you rather than trying to force this or that.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about, you've got to learn though. I mean, that's, you practice this and you make it a habit to listen to yourself, which is, you know, a big part of what you do. You're teaching people how to do those things. So you launched the Cycle Conscious Collective. And I just want you to tell my listeners, because I've already looked into it, tell my listeners about this and why they need to join.
Yeah, so Cycle Conscious Collective is a membership group, and it's a couple of things. So predominantly I teach cycle conscious yoga in Cycle Conscious Collective. So every week I publish a new yoga class, and it is synced with your cycle, and it doesn't only help you to practice in tune with your own cycle, but it also helps you to really listen to your body and tune in and notice how you're feeling that day and in that phase of your cycle. It also gives you the tools to, you know, for example, slow down in the autumn phase, or do poses that help you alleviate period pain in the winter phase, and then again do poses that energize your body in the spring and summer phases. And then once a month there is a workshop or a guest speaker interview where we dive deeper into all things cycle awareness. For example, next month the guest speaker will talk about how to track your cycle using cervical fluids, for example, and how to track your ovulation, because lots of women don't know when they're ovulating, which will be really handy to know when you're, for example, hoping to conceive, and so on. And it will also give you so much indication about your cycle. So it's all about cycle awareness and really learning so much more about your hormones and how to, you know, harness the power of your menstrual cycle and use it in your everyday life without feeling overwhelmed, but more just making it something that comes to you naturally and implementing what you've learned.
I wanted to ask, what has been the most important takeaway for you personally throughout this whole journey of, you know, cycle consciousness and the Cycle Conscious Collective?
I think for me, it has been definitely to understand that in the same way as everyone else, I need that time to rest. I need that time to heal. My body needs time to just be, and it's completely okay. You know, it's not a weakness. It's just something that I need, and that will definitely help me to, you know, have more energy in the other phases of my cycle. And just understanding that I can't force things to happen, you know, in the same way as in business, you have different seasons, and sometimes the things probably don't go to plan. And in the same way in your cycle, you just need to have that patience, and also, you know, not necessarily plan your day, your life like today I'll do this and tomorrow I do this, like in a linear way, just more in the cyclical way where you just understand that things come and go, feelings come and go. That's completely okay to find that balance between resting and taking action.
I mean, the whole basis of your business, pretty much. I kind of have an out there question. So about, I don't know how many years ago it was now, 50 years ago, we had, you know, oral contraception come into the picture. So birth control pill. How do you feel about using birth control basically to make your cycle more predictable, to help you kind of come to an understanding with your cycle?
Well, it's a misconception that you have a cycle when you're on birth control. So basically, birth control just creates synthetic hormones. and it suppresses your body's normal hormonal production. And for example, the period on your birth control is not a period, it's medically induced withdrawal bleed, what it's actually called. So basically, the pill just tells your body to bleed now, and then again, the pill gives your body that synthetic hormones in the next, so to say, cycle, even though it's not your natural cycle. Obviously, for some women, it might work and it might feel really good, and they might not, get any side effects. And when they come off the pill, it might be really smooth sailing for them. But for example, I myself, I think I wanted to go on birth control or the pill when I was 15 because I had acne and my periods were so irregular and painful. And again, I was doing competitive sports, working out really hard. All I was taught that, when you're on your period, just, this is a tampon, just put it in and you're good to go, basically. So for me, it was kind of like a traumatizing experience because I just came off the pill and went back on the pill. So my cycle, or the natural cycle when I was off the pill, was always super irregular. I never had the time to become regular. And then I got an IUD after I met my partner a few years ago, and I had it for I think 2 years until I took it out because I just felt so flat all the time. My body wasn't producing the normal hormones that helped me feel good in the spring phase, because estrogen actually indirectly helps you to produce feel-good hormones in your body, so you feel naturally happier in that phase of your cycle. And then I didn't feel any natural tendency to slow down in the autumn phase. I just felt flat, so I didn't feel good about that. And then I came off the IUD or had it taken out, and I've been feeling so much better ever since, and really been tuning into my own cycle, which has been fantastic. But if your pill, or if you feel like the pill or oral contraceptive works for you, that's completely fine. If you feel like, for example, you get some side effects like migraine or bloating or mood swings, then your body's probably telling you that it's not for you. If you feel like you need help with coming off of the contraceptive, message me or talk with your doctor. And we just need to remember that, unfortunately, in the medical world, women are not holding power, and that's probably one of the reasons that we have oral contraceptive that women take. So just, really asking yourself, why are you on the pill in the first place? If it's only to, prevent pregnancy and it's working with that and you're feeling good, completely fine. But if you're on that to fix your periods, it's not the answer, because it doesn't fix your periods. It just gives you synthetic hormones. And when you come off it, your period will be probably even more messed up than it was when you started it.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, birth control or the pill is really just kind of seen as also like a quick solution for things, which is just like one of the problems with, the medical industry, because it really is an industry, is that you have people profiting off the sale of this or that.
Exactly. Yep.
And people aren't necessarily looking for, or let me say, some people are looking for, but natural solutions and natural ways to improve your body aren't necessarily as accessible, like as going to the doctor or something like that. Like, that's right, everybody goes to the doctor. Everybody figures that's like really easy and very mainstream to do, but like you're opening up ways for people to fix themselves or find their cycle again without the use of something like that.
Yeah, and if you have cycle-related issues, there's usually a root cause why you're experiencing that. So that's what we need to find, rather than trying to fix the issue. So you want to fix the cause and not the issue, basically. But the pill and basically the whole medical industry is just focused on fixing the issue and giving you the quick fix, which may not be beneficial in the long run.
Yeah, I think all of this is, I'm glad we're talking about this and people are getting exposed to these ideas as well. I think like, where you are now too, and the US are very like Western in their thinking, which is part of like what we've been talking about, like push yourself through, like
Mm-hmm.
get a quick fix medically for things that are troubling you. I think it's good to introduce these other ways of thinking into the conversation because, I mean, like I said, I don't know of any cycle coaches here, but I'm also in the Midwest of the US. Like if I was in New York, I'm sure there's somebody I could find, or in California.
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to hear about it because they just don't know. And when you
Exactly.
know, like that knowledge is power.
Definitely. And you can actually make good decisions, based on that knowledge. And you can do your own research and just decide what's best for you. So definitely really, really important. And as you said, in Australia, in Finland, in the US, the medical system is very Western. And if you go see a doctor, the doctor most likely won't ask anything about your menstrual cycle unless you go there with a period related issue. Whereas if you go see, for example, an acupuncturist or some sort of, what they say, an alternative medicine doctor or something like that, they would most likely ask you about your menstrual cycle, even if you go there about some non-related issue, basically, because menstrual cycle there is seen as the fifth vital sign telling about your overall health.
If somebody is listening and they're like, how do I get into this kind of realm of cycle coaching or maybe yoga instruction? If they wanted to follow your path, what would be your advice?
My advice would be to, first of all, start your own journey first. So start your cycle awareness journey, really tuning into your own cycle, journaling your cycle, noticing the changes, really working with that. And for example, you feel free to message me on Instagram and just ask me tips on what I would do in your situation, because everyone's cycle is unique and everyone, struggles with unique issues as well. So definitely start your own journey first. And when it comes to yoga, also, practicing yoga, really establishing your own strong practice. And then if you are interested in becoming a yoga teacher, finding a yoga school that offers yoga teacher training. For example, I completed 350 hours last year, and it was really went quite deep, and I really loved it. But when I teach yoga, I basically just share my own practice because I've practiced for such a long time, so it comes really naturally. So I think that's really important to, when it comes to cycle awareness or yoga, to really have that own practice and know what really works for you, and then basically sharing that with the world.
I think that's very good advice. I mean, how can you really teach people when you yourself are not in tune with it? And I mean, that's like the biggest takeaway. I mean, I would take from that. And that goes with anything. Take your own journey first, figure it out first. It doesn't have to be perfect either.
Exactly. And it's always, even if I teach now, I'm still learning. And every day I research more and more stuff about menstrual cycle, and I learn so much from other cycle coaches and by reading and studying. So it's like a never ending journey.
I mean, I think that's also, your dedication, and, you're obviously very driven. It's about that too. Always learning, always, furthering your expertise so that you can pass those things on to your clients and friends and people in your sphere.
Exactly. Absolutely. And as you said, it applies to everything in life.
So is there anything you want to share with my listeners or discuss further?
Well, I think that we dove quite deep into this, and it's like, it can be super overwhelming if you haven't basically heard about cycle awareness before, and all those, different phases can probably sound a little bit overwhelming in the beginning. But when you actually start to be more in tune with it and listen to your body, because it's all about listening to your body and your unique body on each unique day and during each unique cycle. So just really taking the time, and if you feel overwhelmed, for example, I offer plenty of free resources that go through the different phases of your cycle and that help you to understand the phases, and also help you to, build the tools or create the tools in your own life to start living in tune with your own cycle and also noticing the shifts. So don't be overwhelmed about that, because it's not rocket science. It's actually just your body that you may have ignored previously in your life. But when you just start listening to your body and basically just tell your body that, hey, I'm listening, what are you trying to say? That's the first step.
Thank you for, obviously this is a very broad concept. So thank you for kind of breaking it down a little bit. Just, like I think it helps to just give people a little bit of taste, and then obviously, they can reach out and connect with you and learn more, especially from like the resources you offer. So if somebody wants to connect with you, where do you suggest that they find you and reach out?
So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Pirita Yoga, so that's Pirita Yoga. You can find my page on Facebook as well, that's Pirita Yoga there too, and my website is piritayoga.com.
It's all pretty easy because it's very similar to find.
Yeah.
So I'm also going to link all of that stuff so that you can, if you're like, well, what was that again? I'm going to link it for you so you can go directly to her stuff and connect with her. Because you may be listening to this, not necessarily in order. So if you're just listening now, I'm always going to keep up information on her so that you can find her easily. And then I was on your website, speaking of, and you offer some free resources. So what are the free resources you're offering right now so that people can learn a little bit more?
So probably the best 3 ones would be the Cycle Awareness Guide. So it's a 5-page PDF going through basically the energetic and hormonal cycle. Then there's the Ancient Balance System Guide that takes you through basically how to create a holistic practice around your cycle. So for example, what sort of meditations to do in each different phase and so on. And I also offer free consultation calls. So these would be for someone who are struggling with their periods or do have some specific questions, for example, about PMS or irregular cycles or so on. So that's a free 30-minute call, and basically we'll be able to cover quite a lot in the 30 minutes.
And so what you're saying is also do not be afraid to reach out.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just a normal human being.
Yeah. And I know this, like we've discussed, this can be kind of a difficult conversation to have at first, but like you can find so many more workable solutions for your life and maybe discover, different ways of living just by striking up a simple conversation with her, doing the 30-minute consult. And I really suggest you do. And like she said, she's a human. So like, just reach out to her, and that's, this is what she does. And she's an expert on this. You never know how one, just putting yourself out there, saying her DM, doing the 30-minute consultation, you never know what effects that's going to have in your life, and basically how it can improve your life in ways that you don't yet know. So it's worth a little bit of discomfort to try and initiate that conversation at first. And like I said, she's an expert. She has these conversations with people every day, and part of what she does is she helps put you at ease. So I would say reach out to her. She said she's a human, very obviously. So just, message her, connect with her. That's, she wants to connect with you.
Exactly. And it's, as you said, it's all about connection and just having that authentic conversation and figuring out what works best for you and in your unique situation.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you again for coming on the podcast. Like she said, reach out, connect with her. I'm going to include links in the Instagram, on my link in bio and everywhere. So you don't really have an excuse. So reach out to her. She's really awesome. And thanks for your time, because I really think you're going to blow some minds.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an honor to be on your show.
Thank you so much. I know in this crazy world and with everything going on, it's hard to find some time to do something different like this. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it was really lovely to connect with you as well.
Okay, so I will talk to you later. Obviously on Instagram, whatever. Okay, all right, bye.
All right, thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.
So I really hope you enjoyed hearing from Pirita. all of that is just like so amazing. Reach out to her, go look into her, all of her free resources, reach out and do that, 30-minute consult with her. I think you're only going to appreciate yourself more when you're opening up this part of your life more and breaking down the shame, breaking down your mental blocks that keep you from really being in tune with your body. On another note, we're going to go into some advice. Guys, this is a very, kind of a tense request for advice. As I say always, and I will say this in perpetuity, I'm not a psychiatrist. I am just little old me. And I'm giving you advice as if you were my best friend sitting right across the table from me and not all the way in San Francisco. That's a hint, Tanya. Anyway, so I'm going to read this request to you, and I've actually gotten really good feedback and requests for also some topic ideas in the future. But let me read this to you now. So it says, my fiance and I have lived together for 6 years now. At first, he would shower a couple times a week, usually before we went out on the town, after a workout, or before hanging with his friends. He is black, and I understand it is not good for his hair to shower frequently. However, his lack of showering has been getting progressively worse each year. Currently, he has not taken a shower for over a month. I've tried being mean, calling him smelly, or threatening no sex. I've tried being kind and suggesting shower sex, but usually he gets defensive and walks away from me. I love him dearly, but cuddling with him for long periods of time is difficult. Help. So, I am, if you don't know me personally, Bobbie is a ambiguously, I don't know what you'd say what I am, ambiguously originated white Caucasian person. I have ties to a couple Native American tribes, but I am definitely, I would always be open to like a DNA thing if they weren't so creepy. But I'm pretty sure I'm not, African or black. So I do not know much about the needs of that type of hair. And so I'm not going to say that I'm an expert or really suggest anything in particular for that. But I am going to maybe break down the problem that I'm seeing here. And, I've tried to learn more about black hair and everything like that. And I do not know what your race is. You say I understand it is not good for his hair to shower frequently. So maybe you're not also black. But I've tried to learn about this hair type. Maybe you could also learn more about, the rituals and, what black hair needs. So maybe you can understand maybe if there's a gap in understanding on his part, or maybe there's a deeper psychological issue. Hair is a very personal thing to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're male or female or where you're from. And in the United States in particular, we actually have a lot of difficulties with acceptance of black hair. In the workplace, in being legally protected to have your natural hair or style your hair however you are if you were black. And I was just looking at this chart today. It was not a chart, it was a map. And it was saying where in the United States there are protections for workers to have natural hair. And it was like 4 or 5 states. It was just kind of pathetic. And you'd think it's 2020. But then again, it's 2020. Look at what's happening all around the world. There's been this big awakening and collective frustration that is creating this impetus and more progress. It's one of those things, hair is something that, and from what I understand, black hair is something that you have to learn to take care of because it's a very involved process. I'm sure other hair types have, their own needs and stuff. I will just say this, I'm very low maintenance. I wash and condition my hair more often now, and I've had my own struggles with hygiene. I'm just going to be real. Somebody with depression and anxiety, and you'd think, with OCD, you're going to be showering and stuff all the time. Maybe now, but a lot of times it takes a lot of freaking effort just to get in the shower and feel like, I don't know, there's just something about showering and cleaning yourself that's like a huge hurdle. But I'm pretty low maintenance, even given those bouts where I don't necessarily shower every day. Maybe you'll be like twice a week or something. But in more normal times, I'm I roll out of bed or I wash my hair and I just let it air dry. I never really learned how to do my hair. I think braids are to the extent I can do, and I can't even really braid my own hair. So hair is like this thing that comes with a lot of emotion. It comes with a lot of feelings, and maybe you have a personal attachment to your hair. But like on a whole hygiene aspect, I think something's going on here. You said that, you guys have been together for 6 years. You've collected a lot of data in that time about, his habits, stuff like that. I would say that, him being concerned about showering and his hair type, I don't really think that's necessarily the problem. I don't think it's because it's not good for his hair or, whatever you think is going on. I think maybe, I don't know, I would think there's a deeper psychological thing going on where he doesn't want to shower. Usually people, when they're having a down mood or when they're chronically depressed, or maybe they're just going through a depressive episode or something like that, you're not going to really be showering very frequently. And you obviously know your fiance very well. We all like to think we know everybody very well. And the truth is, a lot of times with men, is that they will not necessarily show their signs of mental illness in the same way that women will show their signs. Women, we talk more. Men have been taught, this toxic masculinity or machismo, whatever. They've been taught not to express how they feel or express their emotions or talk about their mental illness or talk about if they're having a hard time emotionally. They repress it. They don't want to talk about it. They think it makes them seem less masculine. So I would I don't know. It says you've tried being mean, calling him smelly, or saying no sex. I don't think those are very good tactics to actually solve whatever is going on here on a deeper level. Suggesting shower sex is maybe a good path forward, but I don't think it's kind of like a passive action. It doesn't really say that. I'm just going to assume that you've tried to talk about this with him, just talking to him, and now you're resorting to these other tactics. I would try and work through like a list and see if you can rule out some certain things. So maybe you should just suggest going to therapy, or just start talking about, like, maybe you should get a therapist or try online therapy, whatever, or just start talking about therapy in general and maybe see if that goes anywhere. Maybe there's something deeper going on and it's not coming across in a way that would be obvious. You say he gets defensive and walks away from you. This is pretty normal. If he's getting defensive, that also tells me that there might be something else going on. Obviously, it's contributing to some of your discomfort. If he doesn't smell very good, that's difficult. I'm sure it's difficult when I'm not showering. I know sometimes I smell. I don't often put on deodorant at home when I'm just staying at home now. So it can just be really hard to breach this subject, and it's really hard to figure out what's actually going on. I would suggest outside help, or I don't know. I would not do an ultimatum. I would not, say you're not going to have sex. If that is specifically like you using it as a bargaining tool. If you don't want to have sex with him because you cannot stomach the smell, then I would just say that, I don't feel like having sex. I'm sorry. Would you like to shower first? Or maybe we can have sex after you shower, or why don't we freshen up in the shower and then we can have sex? People can still have a sex drive when they're super depressed too. I don't really think this has to deal with anything about his race. Really, talking about this and breaking it down. It's getting worse every year. I've read a lot of Reddit threads where people are having this issue with their significant others, and a lot of times they uncover that there's some sort of trauma or some sort of deeper psychological block that is causing, them to not shower or being resistant to being hygienic, which part of being hygienic is being clean and smelling good to the people around you. That's part of being in a society, apparently. You have to smell good and not be odorous. I would suggest trying to have another conversation with him, or maybe doing couples therapy and bringing it up there in a way that won't embarrass him And hopefully you guys can find a way to get him back on the path to showering frequently, and it will improve those other parts of your relationship. You obviously love him, that's clear, and you guys are engaged to get married. So I think, if you're entering into a marriage, you've got to start seeing it as, here's an obstacle, but there's something on the other side. We're always going to stay together. That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own comfort, or if you're in a bad situation, you have to stay together. But marriage is a partnership, and you're going to have to find ways to talk about these difficult conversations or difficult topics without too many hurt feelings on either side. So this is a very complicated issue. I wish you luck. This is very hard to talk about. So I really wish both of you the best of luck, and I hope you get the help you need to try and get to this underlying issue here. So just saying this again, if you guys want your advice answered to, if you want me to talk about it on the air, I have an anonymous Google form I've linked on my Instagram. You just go on over to Google. It's anonymous. I have no idea who anybody is submitting these in. Even if, it's Tanya or Peyton, I wouldn't know. And I just thank you for trusting me to give you advice and give you my honest opinion on things. I know I'm not always going to hit the spot or, give you exactly what you want to hear, but I'm just here as if you were my friend and trying to break it down from an unbiased perspective. So thanks again for trusting me. And send me your advice queries. I'm always here, and I'm always eager to help you. Next, we're going to move on to the hot takes section. All right, let's wrap this episode of Petty Daydreams up with the hot take. So, I think we're all aware that the RNC was really pulling out all their clowns and fools this week for the circus. One person in particular really struck me as a special kind of idiot. And I would say this if this was a Democrat saying this as well. So don't accuse me of being some kind of commie lib. Commie, yes. Socialist, yes. I don't know. Just don't try and label me. So this was a RNC speaker. And she has a child, an adopted son, and she said, statistically, my brown son is more likely to commit a violent offense over my white sons. Anti-abortion activist Abby Johnson said in a YouTube video earlier this year. My God. So that poor child, first of all, that he's living in a household with some white bitch who doesn't understand the unique struggles he's going to face in this world. I hope he is sheltered from the shit his parents say, and I hope he gets to go on with his life without any mommy issues, and he gets to just leave that bitch behind and have a great life without her. To be mothering a child that is not your own race brings its own complications and its own difficulties. That's something that you've got to figure out with your social worker. And we've all seen like This Is Us. Obviously, that's not the end-all be-all to how to deal with this kind of situation. But, there's difficulties that can come from that. And you've got to try your best to help them understand who they are within your family and within the greater world. She's very much failing at this. She's also the same person that said that the household should get one vote and the man should be the deciding voice on where that vote goes for elections in the United States. So not the brightest light bulb in the bunch. I think she's setting back the women's movement 100 years, which is probably what the RNC really wants. But that's our special hot take for this week. And I hope you saw it and cringed and, went, what an idiot. And especially given the timing of everything happening in this country, I think she deserves to be viscerally grilled online, and it came to her. So if you somehow were living under a rock this week and you didn't see this, now you know. And her name is Abby Johnson, and she says these things in public with no shame. So that's going to be it for this week, guys. Thanks for listening to the whole podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to have some more guests coming up in the next few weeks, but I'm going to be heading out of town hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to have maybe a shorter episode prepared for you during that time. But as always, leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. I've been seeing you guys leaving the reviews. It melts my heart. Haven't been having the greatest time this week. So to hear from you and hear your feedback, hear your ideas for what you want to have on the show, I appreciate it tenfold. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. The music throughout this episode was Bright Side by Evan Schaefer. Thanks to that guy. You're a cool one. And stay petty.